Bye.
What do I do with my hands?
Yeah. And I'm not drunk yet, so it's like even better.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So I think we're recording everywhere.
Oh, wait. We're awesome.
I got red.
Cool.
Okay. Evan's red.
Good.
Yep. See.
Sweet. Red all the way around?
Yeah. Red,
Cool.
red. You red in?
Red.
Does it sound good in your headset? Do you need me to turn you up or down?
I'm good.
Cool. You can say whatever you want. You can cuss on this podcast. It's cool.
Okay.
Tits.
Yeah. if you say anything that you want to take back, like NDA stuff or not out yet, we can cut that out too.
Sure.
So if you fuck up, then
It just goes to the Patreon guys.
yeah.
My OnlyFans gets it.
Yeah.
Early release.
Yeah, that and my sweet, sweet pinkies.
Well, on that note, welcome to the Big Tex Ordnance podcast. We're here at SHOT Show 2024. I'm Ike. We have Ian. And then our guests today are Jack Leuba and Ash Hess from Knights Armament. So,
yeah, it's good to be here, man. I know you guys have been one of our prime dealers for a long time, so it's good to be here with you.
yeah, good to have you all on.
We tried last year to get on it. Didn't work out last year, so we're here this year. We made it happen. It was kind of ugly there for a minute, but we're here.
Yeah, I'm glad we got it. We were able to make it work.
I think we was Ash, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Met the royal we.
Yeah.
As in he.
Yeah.
wanted to do it.
He, I, me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Well, cool. So, I guess Jack, we'll start with you. How'd you get into Knights and in this industry? And
Oh, yeah. So, wow, we're going way back on this
Yeah.
one. All right. So let's open up the time machine. So I was a jarhead. I did the Great Cola Wars for a while. That was fine. Being a Marine, going through that stuff. And I was a grunt, I wasn't anybody special. I wasn't, anything cooler than just a normal Marine. I was into shooting, so I like that. I like that aspect of it. So I did well when it came to like shooting stuff like that. So I'd been a competitive shooter, kind of going through. And then I went to Quantico, was working as an instructor there for the Small Arms Weapons Instructor School. And then we kind of took over the Marine Corps Rifle Program, so revamped that. I mean, that was, several people's lives now ago. And then from there, I went to the UK and I worked for the Royal Marine Commandos as part of the CQB and Marksmanship Liaison from the Marine Corps there for that. So it was a really, really cool gig. Got to, so I think kind of expand my horizons and kind of instructor style and, how you interface with people and using a bunch of different things. And, so as being like an M4 user, I was kind of leveraging some other things with that. And I came back from that tour, and I'd always flirted with getting out. It's always like, okay, yep, I'm in the Corps, and it's this thing, but it's like, do I really want to do this like my whole life? Is that like, I always kept like getting pulled into some other thing. It was like, well, hey, you should go be an officer, and so I was going to do that, and then some planes hit some towers and crashed in the field in the Pentagon. So, that changed that course. So that's when I got involved in the war stuff for a while.
Thanks, Bin Laden.
Yeah, what a dick. Went to UK, came back, was set up, did another deployment to Afghanistan after that. And it was kind of, I kind of already knew before that I was really like not loving it anymore. Like I got promoted out of my area of expertise, like I was a really good squad leader. I loved the job. I loved what I was doing. You were there like in the mix doing things with dudes, war stuff, not the other kind of stuff. You're like really engaged in like, good like combat things, and loved that aspect of the job. Did not like the paperwork and all that stuff, and pressing uniforms and kind of that transition to garrison, and that was kind of like the wind down. So I kind of saw like, well, there's really not going to be much more of this going on. And you always flirt with that thing like, oh, go over to MARSOC and whatever, But at the time, it was like, well, they weren't taking any staff NCOs, So it's like, well, I'm not gonna do that, And then it was like, okay, do I really want to go start all the way over somewhere? And I did not. So I got out and I was doing the instructor gig for a little bit with F2S Consulting, and that was like actually the thing for like maybe a year and a half. It became pretty apparent pretty quickly that I was not going to make like a full-time life career out of that, just like with travel and everything going on, had a kid, it's like, well, if I'm actually going to participate in like life with people, I'm going to need like a real job. And buddy of mine called me up. He was like, hey, I don't know what you're up to, but Knights has an opening. So caught up, interviewed in, started working at Knights back in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I came in as the military and government liaison. and which was really kind of just the made up job, which is great though because I had a lot of freedom to do whatever kind of fit. Okay, what do you do here? It's like, well, I'm going to tell you why this needs to change, or this product improvement. But a lot of it was talking to the customers, make sure they were getting what they needed, working on programs, projects, stuff like that. And then I just kind of started, just moved up through, just through, being there and being decent at my job, I guess. Somebody thinks I am. Yeah, that's the story of how I got to Knights.
Cool. Ash, what did you do before the beard?
Yeah, before the beard. Did Army. I did 22 years in Army, and then so I came in 1995, and that's kind of important to the story. But right around 2012, before that, in between then, did 3 Afghanistan tours, did an Iraq tour, shot people, did cool things, urban combat, mountains, all that sort of stuff. 2012, the people that were in charge of my unit told me to find a job, and they didn't care where I went. I just couldn't be there. And so I ended up at the 10th Mountains Light Fighter School and did some air assault instructing for a little bit, and then they handed me the marksmanship program. And they did that because way back in probably 2005, 2006, started doing some other shooting and stuff like that. Shooting wasn't a thing for me. It was stuff we did. 2005, started getting into it more and did a bunch of classes, and came back in 2010, and I went to a Call to 4 class and been shooting with Call to 4 since 2010. And then so they handed me the keys to this program, and doctrine was terrible. And the only instruction that the general had for us was it has to be a doctrinal school. And so we're going through the doctrine, and it's just straight terrible. Well, I started emailing Fort Benning, who was in charge of all that stuff, and was causing a ruckus with them. So we managed to make our course good. Everybody liked the course and all that. And my penance for messing with Fort Benning was they sent me to Fort Benning. And as soon as I got there, they're like, hey, you've been bitching about this marksmanship stuff for 3 years now. Fix it. So I spent the last 7 years in the Army. I could have got out 2 years before I did, but we had momentum because we changed the manual. And then after the manual changed, then they wanted to change the pistol manual. So we changed the pistol manual. And then they were like, hey, we want to change the qualification. And that was about the time I was getting ready to drop my packet. And I had momentum. And I was like, if I leave now, nobody's gonna have this momentum that I have. Mm-hmm. So stayed an extra year, then dropped my packet, got the qualification changed. So by the time that I left the Army, from 2012 until 18, it was shooting every day or talking about shooting or arguing about shooting. But we got a lot of progress done for the Army on marksmanship stuff. Some people will disagree with that. That progress may not have been good in their opinion, and they weren't writing the book, so their opinion is whatever, right? Yeah. So did a lot of that stuff. Well, in that meantime, because I was paying attention to what a lot of dudes are doing. And Jack talked about failure to stop, and he was pretty prolific on M4 carbine. That's where I started seeing the name. Didn't know it had anything to do with Jack Leuba. It's a screen name. It's whatever. But then, a couple times they'd come up for program stuff, ended up Fort Benning, stuff like that, where we actually got to meet. And then he was up at Fort Benning for an introduction to a program that SIG ended up winning and was up there for that. And we were at a bar drinking beer. And he's like, when do you get out? And I was like, about 6 months. He's like, you should come down for an interview. And I was like, okay. And so interview, and basically all that happened in August. And I didn't get out until December. And usually for Army dudes, transitioning and transition vets is a big thing. That's one of my pet projects with that, like on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But most everybody, doesn't matter how high ranking they were, 2 months out, they're freaking out because that's when they realize their paycheck's getting cut in half. Right? Yeah. They're getting that military divorce, and the Army gets half back. They're like, thanks for coming, goodbye. And so that's when they start realizing that, and that's when they start looking for a job. Because they're, dedicated to the unit and they're doing all this sort of stuff. And then they're like, oh, shit, I don't get paid in 2 months. I've got bills to pay. I got to find a job. They start freaking out. Well, Jack had already had me down there for an interview. They sent an offer letter. I signed the offer letter the 1st of September. And then I was just treading water until December. Yeah. Like the Army could have been like, hey, you know what? Get the fuck out of here. And I'd have been like, deuces. Been in Florida the next day and been going to work. So that's how I ended up at Knights. I just say I do military sales. According to the system, it's military sales specialist, but that hurts my feelings. I was an Army guy. I don't like calling myself a specialist, right? So I just say military sales. But basically what Jack was talking about, where he started at, that's where I'm at. So we do programs. We're just going off and doing programs. One of the first things that I did was 6.5. Like when I first started there 6 years ago, we started working on 6.5. So we've been working on 6.5. Basically, I left the Army, and 6.5 Creedmoor has just been what we spent a lot of time with. And then the light assault machine guns kind of. It's not my baby in the sense that I'm doing anything with it, but I'm the guy that does all the machine gun stuff. So anytime anybody's doing something with the machine gun, then that's kind of my project that I spend the most time on. And we got a bunch of cool things. We're having some fun and shoot guns, and it's terrible. And that's in Florida. And the big complaint is all the roads are straight in Florida. So there's no fun on a sport bike.
So what's the new stuff y'all have coming out? Like, what about the new line of suppressors?
Yeah, the new suppressors are really interesting departure from where we had been for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Knight's been doing suppressors since the 70s.
Yeah.
And it dates back to, some early snap-on stuff with 9mm, some collet lock stuff for M16s, all like really traditional suppressor stuff. One of the biggest changes when it comes to suppressors in the modern era is that more people now have experience with suppressors, so they know what's important. Mm-hmm. If you look back to the 90s to the early 20-aught whatevers, like everything was just so focused on decibel reduction. What's the sound? What's this? You got to give credit to them. But Huxworks being one of the first companies to come out with like a truly no backpressure suppressor. And initially when everybody was looking for that, looking at that from like the manufacturing side, it's like whatever, just make your gun right. Okay, that there's a point to that, but going into making cans that are designed from the outset to have low back pressure, as little back pressure as possible, but that kind of leverages into another part of that, which is the user exposure to toxic gases. Because like everything that happens with the gun, like all the bad stuff tends to go away down the barrel until you put a suppressor on it. And now it's like that ball right around you. So you're getting like there's multiple benefits from getting that gas out of the system. It's still going to happen. You're still going to have an increase to that exposure, but it's nowhere near like the orders of magnitude to be if you had a traditional can on it. Because we actually started doing that kind of we call it the PRT, the pressure reduction technology, and that had been integrated like using some other more traditional baffle styles, some more traditional like welded stuff. But as we kind of started advancing through that, we got into using additive manufacturing, 3D printing, which opens up a lot of things in the world, and you can see why everybody uses that, especially in suppressors of this type.
Before you get any further, I just want to hit on that toxic gas at operator, because people don't think about it, especially your indoor ranges, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And where I first started hearing about it was when I was doing some shooting with the Ranger Regiment, and they were the safety guy came through and was hammering on lead on your hands and not wiping it off and what you're breathing and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on with this? Why are you being an ass about this, right? And he's just like, dude, we're losing operators, highly trained operators, because their blood gases, their heavy metals, or all that sort of stuff we have to take them out and they have to go through the protocols. So that toxic gas operator, on the commercial side and on the civilian side, it's not something we're not shooting like those dudes are. But it is something that we need to be cognizant of. That's why I just wanted to pause, Jack, and dive on that, because if you're doing a lot of shooting and we got people that are shooting, they're running around the internet going, I shot 50,000 rounds this year. And you're like, okay, you just expose yourself to all that shit. So this is important to you now.
Yeah.
Where you're shooting 5 rounds a year, cool, you can eat that lead and you can put your dip in after you've been playing with the rounds and do all that sort of stuff. That's just I know it sounds like safety bob and all that sort of stuff, but it is something that leads into where Jack's getting ready to hit with the suppressors. That's the thing. Like when they're calling for programs and all that sort of stuff, the toxic gas operator is like, and they're like, yeah, can we have this can a little bit quiet too? But this is what we're testing, and they're just like, we need it to do can things, but if you're over on this, you're fucked. We don't even want it, no matter how good it sounds. That's just something that's important to especially to these new cans that Jack's getting ready to get into. It's just that's a thing.
No, it's super important. I think it's worth saying it. Of once you shoot a gun, you should treat your hands like you were just playing with human feces. You should be scrubbing yourself down. It's seriously, it is harming people.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's like, oh well, it's lead or whatever, it's safe in the ground. It's like, no, it's not. It's bad for you. It's really, really bad. There's a reason why there's no more leaded gasoline. Like it's like super bad. We're exposing ourselves to that all the time because the primer components, not just the bullets. It's what's in the actual gases that are coming out of that gun. Everybody ignored it or was ignorant of it for so long, and it's a shame because it's hurting people. I can't say that it's all because of that, but I mean, so many of my friends have such significant health problems that like are untraceable to the reason why. People developing immune system problems like all the time. And you can trust the mental, all kinds of issues, and it's just it's bad, and we owe it to the community and to our operators to like pay attention to that. But anyway. Yeah. So
when you get into the studies, when you actually start paying attention to that, and you see these studies, the stuff that you're pumping into it, you're like looking at the gun. Go, do I really want to go shoot this gun? like it's just it's stuff that you wouldn't, even smokers when they see all that, the smoking dudes would be like, oh yeah. And that.
Did you ever hear the serial killer lead theory thing? So why there was so many serial killers in like the 70s and whatever was because of the leaded gasoline and like lead in paint, that it was just like they were exposed to it so much that it like changed their
no, I mean there's all kinds of correlations to be made from, it's like I don't have enough data to do that, but I mean like if you like overlay like the amount of like lead in the environment to like the violent crime rate and all that stuff inside the US and around the world, it's like it looks very correlative.
Yeah, there's a whole theory that is why like there was so many serial killers back in the day.
Yeah, or they're just better now.
Or that.
Yeah, they just learned about the DNA.
Science.
But yeah, anyway, so suppressors, and then so talking about the changeover of kind of a traditional baffle stack and welded suppressors, welded tube, and then kind of going to tube on tube, with the kind of labyrinth design to do that pressure reduction stuff. But getting into the additive manufacturing will really open that up, so it really allowed us to do some cool things. In our new suppressors in the PRG line, and in one of the 556 cans, the larger one, also the 556 QDC CRS PRT. I know we have like the longest suppressor names in all the world.
First try though, he nailed it.
Yeah, he's the naming guy. So he does
whoa. I'm the guy that maintains the naming convention. I am not the guy in charge of the naming convention. I get beat up. Mr. Knight was in the office the other day. It was like, we really should have like a better name for this. Like, yes, sir. I know it's bad. Because all these things, like 90% of what we release has its roots in the government program. So somewhere there was something where it's like, okay, I've got this model. I need to differentiate it in some way. Okay, what is it? Is it 556 QDC? What? It's like 7. I don't know. But yeah, so like it comes from those, and then you wind up like having that part number already established, and so that just becomes a name. So I'm passing that blame to somebody else in engineering probably. So the newer cans have our purge technology, and that is like the really cool aspect of the cans of being able to eliminate first round flash and first round pop. Well, not completely eliminate, but really mitigate it. The acoustic pop is gone. You get a little bit of flash because you do still have some environment that's getting burned. But it came out of a program we did, several years ago. Was when it started, was figuring out first round flash and how to stop it. And the very first can was really an M110 suppressor, and we just punched a bunch of inert gases into it to see what it was, because at the time it's like really didn't have conclusive evidence on what caused first round flash. Is it unburnt powder? Is it some transition from some area to an area? Is it pressure changes or whatever? What it turned up to is that it's oxygen in the end of the suppressor. Especially in those last baffles right in front of the end cap. So figured out a way basically to use the pressure inside the can to purge that area of that oxygen. And so that's where that comes from. And then we are also able, by doing, additive manufacturing, we have this really cool software. It took 14 years of data accumulation in it, but we use an ANSYS blast analysis software. And we've just been teaching it over the years of, of exactly what's happening. So we can take this software and it can predict within about a decibel on what the can's going to sound like, where heat's going to go, where the pressure's moving, how fast it's moving through the suppressor. So you can take that and we look at the thermal profile as well. because like when a can fails, that's bad. But you are going to super elevate that. Like there's a tremendous amount of energy that's being blasted into that. Just like a barrel. That like surface level heat that then has to like continue to build to actually get that out. So when you look at a barrel that's reached 500 degrees, like that surface temperature is like insane.
Yeah.
You're talking like 1600 plus degrees, like flash. Very interesting from that side. But so we can take that can, design the can where the heat is going to specific places inside of the can, so we can thin things out, thicken things up, so that it makes a stronger suppressor. So we take these suppressors, because I was nervous about the whole additive thing. I think we all were, when it really came down to it, because it was all brand new. You don't have any historic data to look back on. Like all you know is like, well, it's basically metal dust that you're welding together with a laser, and being like, well, that seems right. Yeah, I don't know. So we started testing them, and that was always the thing, like a bunch of manufacturers were like, well, you really don't want to be using additive, you're going to have problems here. It's like, all right, well, let's test it. Let's see what's going on. So the way that we test all the suppressors, especially in the early development phase, is we take the can, we stick it on a machine gun, and we shoot continuous belt full until it falls apart.
There you go.
So our current suppressors will exceed the performance of our last generation of cans.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so they will outperform a welded suppressor. And that's the big thing with welds, especially plug welds and welds that are kind of like joining two surfaces that aren't actually in contact on that weld point. That weld's going to be where your hot spot is. That's being transmitted directly that's outside the can. So that's where like a heat will rise, and you see that external rupture on the side of the can. It's just from that pounding and the pressure, just pushing out. So the new cans, can manage that and come out, and like, yes, they do fail eventually, like everything will, like, yeah, we make it out of Inconel, but you will get to an eventual point of failure. It just happens a lot later than you see with like the stainless or something like that. So the cans are extremely durable. That was kind of always been the priority, because I mean, when it comes to nights, that's always kind of been like a key part of our approach to suppressors is durability. That they need to last. I mean, the NT4, like, you're not gonna find anybody that's be like, NT4, yeah, that thing just pops all the time. And it's like, the NT4's 30-year-old suppressor.
Yeah.
But it's like people say all to me, like, oh, it's a dinosaur. They're like, yeah, it's a dinosaur, but that's like the fucking T-Rex.
Yeah.
Like that is the dinosaur. It's like the Marine Corps bought a shitload of them. Like it's because it's been in the system. It's been a known performer. It does what it
works,
does. Yeah, it works. It's a good suppressor. But yeah, the new suppressors, are, it's literally a generational change.
Yeah.
It's that good like move on. So taking all the good things from the old stuff, like your durability, but then you're adding in your pressure reduction, and then you're getting rid of that flash, which is really good. But people look at our new cans, because we have that little guy, the MCQ, and people are like, oh, what's that even for? That's stupid, it's whatever. And it's like, hey, man, that's, and I don't mean to say like that can's not for you and like you shouldn't have it, but it's like, it's not really like an enthusiast, or a hobbyist, or even, a large degree of professional use can. It's a very specific can for a very specific purpose, and that is from the target side. Mm-hmm. So when you're on the opposite side of, the arm of influence that's coming to affect you, it makes it much more difficult to target that. Because you're not seeing that first round flash, you're not being able to see exactly where that's coming from. You can't hear exactly where it's coming from. So that's what that's for. It is for a direct application, and that was in their requirements, like, hey, we wanted to do this. Okay, gotcha.
And it's polite, right? So we're all shooting in the same room, even though we're keeping the gun small. We've got the MCQ on there. It's polite.
Yeah, it's a courtesy thing, it's professionalism.
Yeah, it's just you're not pushing on the ear pro, it's not rattling the fillings out of your head. It takes the edge off of it, but it's exactly for that. If you're not doing those things, like if you're going off to the range and you're trying to impress how quiet your gun is, that's not the one.
That's not the one for it.
and it should be. You look at that and you go, that's not going to do a lot. Yeah,
correct.
It's tiny, right? And that's just with the MCQ. That's just one of the things come out. But that was one of the things that got built and we got able to release first. Mm-hmm. Jack and Tom are always in there talking about, we got this, we got that. And the MCQ there's a bunch of them got built and they were there and they went out.
Yep.
And people were so thirsty that they bought them. And it's
been a long time since we saw some night suppressors.
Yeah. And it just and that's the thing with additive, because I was there at the tail end of the traditional cans, and then the PRT can. I think that was like the second can that I saw. Like we tested a little bit of 6.5, like I said, right in the beginning when I first started, and then next time we went another round of 6.5, we had the PRT cans, and then I got to see, as we were starting to go into the additive manufacturing stuff, and the additive, so I got to see all that real time. It was all happening, and I wasn't emotionally tied to the old stuff. Right, because I hadn't been around the old stuff, but the additive, like those dudes, Jack could be like, "Hey, we're getting." They just designed a new can, on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, he's like, "Hey, this is the new can." Like it's printed, but the additive, they can do that. They can print one just to make sure it's going to print right, like on a plastic 3D printer, and check it and make sure it's going to do, and it's doing all those things, and then they can send the same program over to the machine that makes that an ink canal. So. And then there's like 2 processes that go with it. So they're like, hey, we got a new can. You'll have it Thursday, and so we're shooting this stuff, and the stuff that we're going to be able to do with the additive cans, and we're getting all that running. And we start off with one little tiny machine, and now we have many more. I think we're up to 5 or 6, something like that for the printers, and. So now we're getting, the 5.56 cans coming out. There's a whole bunch of MCQs that came out. The purge can is coming soon. So it's just going to be, as these things start spinning up and going, you guys are going to see Knights cans like everywhere because we can do that. Just capacity that we can do on the additive side is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
And just being able to watch that, and they're just we're doing contracts like NT4 contract. We're like, we can make this many per month. That's what we can do. Like, these dudes can only work 80 hours a week. That's what we can do. Got to hire 2 more dudes to get another 50 cans per month or whatever it is. And now they're like, I can print like blah, blah, overnight. I can have those to you by Friday. That's just something that's super cool. And on the additive side, and I do a lot on LinkedIn, so I got a bunch of these nerds that are on there because I don't know. I went to the additive guy and I was just like, hey, dude. I was like, I go talk to these people. And I need to kind of have somewhat of an idea of what the fuck this is. And I was like, and I need it in the Barney. And he's like, okay, powder, laser. This tells the laser to do this, and then poops out, and you got a suppressor. I'm like, fucking cool, man. That's what I needed. But it's just really cool to watch. That sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant change for us. Because we, you look at people, manufacturers today, and it's like, from the outside, you're like, yeah, that's a gun company. It's like, really, it's a machine shop that makes guns.
Yeah.
So it's like classic machine shop stuff. It's like, that's not what we deal with. We deal with everything on the backside of that. But, what it takes to get people in that are good welders, that have the experience, they know how to make a good weld, especially when you're welding Inconel and some of these specialized things.
Yeah.
So it's a challenging, but there's a lot of things that are in our product catalog that are weld requirement, and you'll see that, especially when we get things like, 110s and NT4s that we have to make, and like those are traditional welded suppressors, and they take a tremendous amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it would almost, had we not had an additive line, we would still be way out on all of our suppressors because it all has to be in line behind that stuff. That stuff always has a priority. So the suppressors are great. They're more and more coming. They're printing them every day. They're hitting the market. We try to spread it out initially, to get a good spread to buyers. But yeah, it's like, it's time. Like, if you want a Knights can, get to your dealer and get some stuff ordered because they will be coming.
Nice.
And we're releasing another new can here at SHOT Show.
Okay.
Yep. So a smaller version of the 7.62 can. I can say that now, I guess.
Okay. We're at SHOT now.
I think we had some leaked photos, which is fine. That's kind of one of the funny things.
And video.
Like, everybody tries to like cover stuff up. Like, I don't know, I can't talk about this thing. It's like, well, it's like, it's shot. It's fine. Yeah, just let it happen. So the suppressor stuff is really cool. It dovetails in really well, to the new gun line. Like we redid the bolt a couple years ago. The E3.2 bolt, and then the 7.62 and 6.5 bolt, which is kind of in that same trajectory. Kind of improved performance. So it's like, because we have enough guns that are out in the world we can't guarantee that they're all going to wind up with a Knights can. You know, somebody already has a can. You know, they don't want to buy every can that's in the world, you know, whatever manufacturer comes out. You know, so having something that'll work with, you know, maybe a can that has a higher amount of back pressure than what you'd really find optimal, but what we all worked with for decades anyway, going into it. So the new bolts, you know, both of them work really well. But when you put it all together, you know, a Knights can or a Knights gun, it's just, that's exactly right, you know, and truly gone along together. You know, and it's funny, you know, especially, well, it's not funny coming from the perspective of the buyers, but, you know, like we had, you know, the cans, you know, that went out because we elongated the locking collar on the cans to work with our suppressor shrouds, because that went with the program that we were doing. So, you know, we kind of baselined on that, but then like realized that there were 11.5 guns with URX 4 handguards that they did not fit on, which was not a really great place to be in, you know, and that's kind of one of the, like, you know, you had to make a choice on which we were going to go with it, and really it's like, got to go to the future, you know. Obviously we're going to take care of everybody that ran into that issue, you know, but we've got to be going more in, you know, of looking with that long game. And that really is the game, you know, because that shroud that goes suppressor is a really cool, simple, stupid little thing. You know, as far as like, you know, when you look at it, like, yep, it's just a cover on a suppressor. What's that? But when it comes to protecting the can, you know, and protecting the user from the can, and protecting your line of sight through the Mirage, that's where it's like really shines. You know, so it's a neat little addition, and your cans drop right into it, and a little snap ring, and boom, you got that thing on there. And those are coming. So they're on the price sheet this year. So
Nice.
be able to buy them and get them out. You know, so so the new line the new line of rifles, you know, both in 7.62, 6.5, and the 5.56 line, all go into the URX 6 handguard. So extremely rigid handguard. You know, so you got a traditional barrel nut type of a thing. Handguard goes on, and then a secondary nut comes in, and it requires a specialized tool. But when it comes to making that handguard as rigid as possible while still being able to be removable and replaceable in case of damage, like, that's the way to do it. So it's got a ton of preload on it, super rigid, returns from impact really well, you know, so that's cool. Fully ambidextrous lower receivers, you know, which, you know, has been a long time coming. You know, it's one of the kind of like last things that we'd go along, you know, like, yeah, you got a right side bolt release, and that's great, but would be really a lot cooler if it had both. So doing that was good. So the general overall lower is pretty much the same. You know, it's just I got the mag release, you know, but now you got ambidextrous bolt catch bolt release, so that's cool to have. But then really it's like it's that upper receiver technology that's like really the cool thing. You know, the Mod 2 gas system, which is like, you know, really well regulated to keep the gun running. You know, and it's a little bit of a departure from some of our like legacy stuff, you know, which were gassed really lightly. You know, kind of like almost right on that marginal edge. But you know, it's kind of one of the things of we didn't really have a lot of 5.56 guns that were being used in a professional capacity, you know, kind of until kind of the newer guns, where you need to have that carrier moving at some velocity to work right in all kinds of environments. You know, it's like, yeah, my 3-gun rifle does not feel like what my M4 felt like, you know, but, you know, one of them has a performance requirement. One of them has show up to the range with the ammo that you know and hold it, you know, flat pretty much all you're doing. You know, but when, you know, you're in a helicopter and you're shooting straight down and it's -20, you know, will that gun still work?
Yeah.
You know, when you've been shooting, you know, hundreds of rounds, and, you know, is it still going to function? You know, it's still going to pick up the round. So, yep, you know, like, it is not the softest shooting gun, nor would I really want it to be, because I need it for that functionality. You know, I need to have that reliability and durability in the system.
Yeah.
And it does that, you know, so really, really happy with the guns. I mean, they've gone through, you know, multiple programs, you know, and, you know, for a long time, you know, I've looked at the SR15, SR16 line, you know, of being about as far as you can go, you know, in a 5.56, you know, AR type of a platform. You know, and there's tons of good guns out there today. You know, it's not to say that, you know, like, we're the only ones to make a good 5.56 gun. There's tons of good guns out there, you know, so, but it's like, how do you outperform that?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, at that point, you kind of, you're in that, like, that the margins, of where can I get this next 2% improvement, this next 5% improvement, because you're really looking for about a 20%, over anybody else that's in your sphere to really, be a noticeable improvement. Getting the guns to that point, was a really cool thing to do. We held the hands of them all the way through. So it's like, sitting there at the drawing, at the talking to R&D of like, here's what we need, here's where we need to go with it, and watching them come up with these products it's awesome. It's one of the best parts of the job.
And that's what I want to hit on. I try not to do anything like podcasts where we're talking about Knights Armament without talking about Knights Armament, right? Yeah. So there's anywhere between 250 and depending on the week, to 250 to 300 employees. 300,000 square foot is what we're using for the facility. Damn. And Jack and I on a daily basis in the factory. Like when you walk into the factory, Jack's more important than I am, but inside the factory, day to day, I'm like one of the least important people there. Right? I mean, you walk into all these places, and there's people that are doing deburrment. There's people that are making the suppressors that we already talked about. We got barreling in there. You got the R&D people in there. You got production engineers in there. You got the housekeeping staff that's doing stuff. And inside the factory, I'm like, I go out here and I sell guns, right? But they're the ones that make all this happen, right? We get the glory because we're on the internet and we're all this sort of stuff, and that's why when people are talking smack about the company, which they do, right? And that's why I come in. It's not. I know these people. I work with them every day. I'm walking around cruising. We go to break time together. We go to lunch together. So when they're disrespecting, Knights is this, blah 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 blah. It's those people that nobody ever heard about, and that's why I try to get them onto every podcast. Yeah, just talk about the people. It's just like you guys. I mean, sometimes you're out there and you're shipping something, but not often, right? Yeah. They're the ones that everybody's like, oh, good job of shipping. It's like, bro, there was 13 other people involved in that, right? And it's the same with us, right? We get to go out here and we get to go to SHOT Show, and we got these cool brand new guns that we're getting ready to show off and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't turn one wrench. I didn't touch a machine. I put them in a case and sent them to SHOT Show, right? So that's where the company's at. That's what Knights Armament is those 250, 300 people that are back there doing that sort of stuff that allow us to be able to go do the things that we do, because we show up and we go chase these programs. We get the gun. We go chase the program. If it works, it doesn't. Whatever. We go back there and we say, I broke it, or they broke it, or good job. It just. And then it goes through that whole system, and then that's what comes out to the commercial. When we put that on the commercial thing, that's what's coming out there, right? And and we've been doing this product transition where the UX4 guns, and it's got the notch on the upper, and everybody's like, "What the hell is this for?" Yeah. And it's all the prep for the stuff that's getting ready to go. 8 o'clock in the morning when everything lights off and people start taking pictures of it and all that sort of stuff. It's all been coming. It's all been incremental. And like I say, it's not us, it's them that's doing that. Jack gets to be more involved in the good idea fairy. I just go okay and sell what we make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should all those, so I'm not going to go back and say all the same things you just said. But the people at the factory are rad. They make this happen. Our R&D guys are amazing. The production engineers, the machinists, all of them. You got to have that to make this happen. You can't have bad stuff with good products. So everybody's important. The Knight family as well. They truly love these products. Yeah. They are absolutely invested in. It's like they do not want to release a bad product. And it's it's them on the line. Everything is owned by the Knights. It's when there's a program coming, it's like, hey, we're going to make a machine gun. That means that Mr. Knight's paying to make that. That's coming out of him. In the company, there's no board of directors. There's no, investors or shareholders that are driving something or telling them it's a bad idea, or whatever. And I've been in meetings where I'm like, I don't know about that. And then it's one of the coolest things, never mind, I was wrong. That he knows what he's doing. Yeah. So the guns coming out, the new ones, a lot of it is really just it's that steady evolution of the system. It's not a whole lot of significant departure from what we've been doing. You've been seeing these things, over the years as they're coming in. So getting it all together, getting able to finally release full 6.5 guns is one of my favorite things. I mean, we've been shooting 6.5 since 2016. So 2016, 2017 is when these programs were really rolling. there's like some little like 260 stuff before that, but getting into the 6.5 stuff, like that's really, I think, kind of like the best application of that medium or that large frame gun.
Yeah.
It's just it actually does what everybody wanted a 16-inch 7.62 gun to do. Where you can legitimately outperform a 20-inch 7.62 gun with a 16-inch 6.5. It's like it is a significantly better in everything. Like the only thing you got is, well, I don't gain any magazine capacity. Okay, but you got everything else you want. And there's always those growing pains of getting into that. Like we went through ammo issues and go through primer issues, and you got bolt gun ammo that you're now sticking in gas guns, and how does it feed and what's going on with it, what's going on with primers and what's going on with triggers. So it's always that. So, but once we got through all those growing pains and got everything like really nailed down, it's super solid product. Really, really happy to have it coming out. Because for years people have been, not saying eating our lunch on it, but I remember it was SHOT Show, like 3 or 4 years ago when I was talking about 14.5-inch 6.5, and we didn't have anything ready for the commercial market, so everybody else was filling that. We were busy doing our stuff on the government side, and we were losing out on what we could do for the commercial market. So turn that around and get it out. I'm super stoked about it.
Cool. Where can people find you on the internet?
On the internet, let's see. So www.knightarmco.com. So that's where the Knight's website resides. We're all over the YouTubes and the socials. If you got Facebook still, if you're old like us, 'cause I think the kids don't do that anymore. But
not the cool ones.
Yeah, they can't buy guns anyway, so I don't care.
Nerds.
Yeah. Yep. So hit us up. And then great dealers like you guys. So if you want stuff, contact them. Tell them to buy more so that you can buy it.
Cool. Well, thank y'all for coming up, doing the podcast with us, sitting down, and talking to us for a little bit. We really appreciate it.
Super good. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. See you on the floor.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank y'all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave a comment for these guys. Tell them how much you hated it or liked it, whichever. We appreciate y'all listening, watching, however you consume this podcast. But, thank y'all for watching, and we'll see you around.